Hi everyone, Catherine here from Inky Finger Cat. Christmas in July. Yep, we're still going, ploughing on. Today's theme is a sketch. Now, I will admit this sketch is heavily inspired by a sketch or a card that I think it was a card that Martin made. So I will link all his details in the thing below. But Martin Mayhem, and it was many years ago, he did a sketch. It wasn't a Christmas card. And then I took that, well, he did a card. I took that, used it as a sketch and created a Christmas card. And this is very heavily, the sketch is based around that because I love the card I made. So I'm going to pop the sketch up top left hand corner and then you'll see what I end up making. So first of all I need circles, so I'm grabbing some white card and then circle die that I think is the right kind of proportion to fit on the front of a normal A6 card. Now I was asked for replicatable and bulk making cards as one of the things that I was asked for, so I've referenced that quite a few times in the videos so far, and if you've not realised, there is a whole series of these, so please do go back, check out the playlist, and then follow along for the rest of the month as well. But yeah, I have referenced a few where these are things that you could make easily over and over, and this is absolutely one of those things, especially if you use pattern papers. So these are generic pattern papers, but you could absolutely make your own pattern paper, as in just do an inky background or whatever, and then this will work really easily. So dead simple. End up making 3 cards based around the sketch using the same circled idea. And I've used 2 different kinds of pattern paper that were just in my stash. I don't know what pattern paper this is, I'm really sorry, but I think I was gifted it at some point in like a swap or something along those lines. So it looks like an icy type background, but it's clearly all different kind of shades of, what's the word, like watercolour. I have got the mask here from Clarity Stamps, and these are the moon masks. You could just use a little post-it note, a circle post-it note, to create a moon shape, and then I didn't even bother inking up my blending brush, just rubbed it over from one direction, from one end. Didn't need to bother covering the whole circle, but that was the bottom cover, the bottom layer of my circle element. And then I'm choosing the pink coloured elements, and I am cutting a little bit off, and again with the blue I do go in and adjust those pinks. I actually make them a little bit smaller so they don't cover as much. I just felt it needed to be just slightly smaller, and I did put a little pencil guide in for that. Now there are plenty of like landscape type dies you can use for this, but I've gone for simple, and that's what I'd urge you to do, especially if you are bulk making. Now this is me trying to decide, do I want it on a pattern paper, do I want it on a plain background, and I decided, let's keep it clean and simple, let's keep it on a plain white background. So next I need to decide what to use as my element. So clearly on the sketch I've used a tree because that's how I'd done it originally, but I'm just going through my supplies and trying to make it easy for myself. Is there something that's already made up that I can use? So from the My Favourite Things polar bears that I used on my tags the other day, I did contemplate using my moose, but I think he's a bit big. I just think he's a little bit big proportionally. It doesn't seem to quite work, so I do change my mind on the moose. And then I think, well, actually, let's do a tree. Let's start with a tree. And this is the one that I think is probably the easiest to replicate. You could go and die cut, if you've got a tree die cut like this, where it's just a silhouette of a tree, you could go and die cut that multiple times over, different coloured cardstocks, different kinds of speciality papers. So I've used a glittery cardstock there. And that could be your element. So far you've got die cutting circles, hand cutting some landscapes, and possibly die cutting a tree, stick a sentiment on, stick a sequin on, or whatever, an embellishment. But as you can see here, this sketch, you could do all sorts of things. So say you've not got a tree die cut or a die cut that would work as an element to sit on the top, use one of your stamped images. So this is a stamp from a magazine, stamped it in Memento, and I'm just adding tiny little bit of shading, nothing particularly difficult to do. You could have stuck with a flat tree, to be fair. You didn't need to add in the shading. I like to add the shading, just the one element, and then I'm just fussy cutting it out. Really easy to fussy cut because it's just wiggly lines basically. Or you could indeed have one that's an even simpler tree to cut out than this, that really is just a triangle. And that's all you're looking for, is something dead simple. So obviously my polar bear, he's a little bit more, with my Father Christmas on, he's a little bit more intense because he was stamped, coloured, die cut. But I did do bulk making of that. So I did do bulk stamping, bulk colouring, and I talk about that in the tag video. So I encourage you to go and check that out. Now, this is the bit where I find it fun. Yes, I'm doing 3 of the same card. Clearly, I've got 3 separate focal features on. But I'm also going to make my backgrounds a little bit different. So I've just got my hill placements to be slightly different. Now, I did those from pattern paper. You could just as easily do it from a pattern paper that you've made yourself, as in inked up. Or you could just do solid coloured cardstocks. Just cut, you know, in 2 different shades, 3 different shades of blue, for example. Or just all white and just blend the edges, for example. That would work too. But I used a pattern paper just because I had got it. And I thought, oh, well, why not? Now, hindsight is a wonderful thing because I do go in with glitter glue later. But actually, if I'd have paused at this point and put the glitter glue on for tracing all of the hills with the glitter glue and then around the circle with the glitter glue, which is what I do on most of them, that would have been better than what I end up doing, which is having to fiddle around both the sentiments and the focal features. So hindsight's a wonderful thing. You can see there I pop something heavy usually when I'm letting something, when I've used liquid glue and I want it to dry, I just pop something heavier. Now, I decided to add different sentiments to each of them. So you can see that on the original sketch, it's got just that tiny little sentiment to the left-hand side. And one of them does end up with one like that. This one, I decided to add a die cut and stacked word, which is Christmas. I decided not to do that on the others because the focal elements were just that little bit bigger. And didn't quite work with it. This one, I've gone for a die cut sentiment that says let it snow. And again, you'll have seen these on that tag video. And then for this one, I just couldn't find one that I wanted to use. So I ended up going to, you can see I try a few different things. I'm just not happy with the ones that I've already got ready. So instead, I end up going with the Peace and Joy stamp set, which is an old Stampin' Up one. And I just stamped the word merry, which is kind of one that's sort of like in reverse. So it's got the outline of is black. That's the bit that you stamped. And into that, there is a gap. And that's where it says merry. I hope that makes sense. I don't think I'm describing that very well. And then we're nearly there. I've just got those little star elements that I want to add. But also, you'll see that I quite often, and that this is a Martin Mayhem thing, I like a layer. So I am going to cut myself a panel. And obviously at this point I'm also cutting myself card blanks and all the rest of it. But I am going to cut myself, not a panel, sorry. I've cut my card blanks because I'm going to add this as a panel onto the front. And I want it to do slightly smaller than my card blank. But I'm trying to put the adhesive not around the outside because I kind of like that it's giving it a little bit of dimension but without adding any bulk. Now, this is the point where I start adding in glitter glue. So the first one, I just add glitter glue to the hill tops, sort of like the line of the hills, and then onto the tree. The second one, this one with the Santa and the polar bear, I do go around the hills. I go around the outside of the circle, and then I also add a little bit of glitter just to the bits that would be fluffy on Santa's costume. And then this last one, I do something slightly different. So again, we're going to add the panel on. This is where I realise it's a bit crooked, so I'm going to quickly and carefully try and peel it back. And then I add a little bit of liquid glue to give me wriggle room just in case I get it wrong again. So again, I'm going to go round the outside of the circle and on the top of the hills for the circle. But I also do a little layer just around the edge of that panel, which when it's dry, does actually slightly lift the paper, which sounds a bit weird, but again it just gives it that bit of dimension and a little bit of sparkle. So, sorry, final steps are to add some kind of embellishment for the little star elements that I've added to my sketch. And I choose these stars that are out of a die cut. It's like a cover die that's got lots of stars in it. And so when I've cut it at some point, I've just left all of those stars ready for me to use in this little pot. So I add 3 on the first one, and then I actually end up adding an extra 2 to this last one, just of the tiny size of the stars. I just felt like it needed a little bit more on that one, not just the 3 elements. And that's it done. I mean, obviously I have to be careful because that glitter glue's got to dry as I was just finishing off the video there. But yeah, really pretty cards and easy to replicate. You could absolutely do that circle element time and time again. No bother at all. And then just add a die cut focal point and add yourself a sentiment and some embellishments. Dead simple. You don't have to add in the glitter glue like I did, but I do think it does add that little special touch. And I do seem to be in a bit of a glitter glue mood at the moment. I think my favourite is probably this little snowman and the Santa and the polar bear, but you know what? I like all 3. Please do like and subscribe to see future videos, but thank you for watching. Until next time, bye bye.